G'day guys and welcome. My name's Michael and I am the DeadAussieGamer, here to share with you my tips, tricks, ideas and strategies for playing and running tabletop role-playing games. Today we're back with another deadly sin video, looking at the deadly GM sin of excuses. Now look, let me start by prefacing this. When I talk about excuses, I'm talking about shirking responsibility. I'm not talking about having legitimate reasons for, say, cancelling a game. For example, emergencies happen, or, someone has a birthday party and you need to, reschedule. These things are fine. The excuses I'm talking about is things happening within your role-playing game that your GM is not taking responsibility for. This could be something along the lines of blaming dice rolls, or simply saying, well, that's what the character does. These reasons and more can sometimes turn into a very toxic gaming environment. So today we're going to be talking about not only what is created through excuses, but also how to obviously deal and contend with GMs who are burdened with this sin, and what you can do to enjoy yourself more. Now for me, when I think of what the GM sin of excuses would be, I always imagine this weedy, weak, pathetic goblin who sits there and just is constantly talking to this higher power or this superior being and always coming up with these babbling excuses to utter incompetence.
I'm sorry, my lord. The trolls in the dungeon were too difficult and the adventurers are all dead. Oh, I'm sorry, my lord. The dice rolled 20. It's not my fault.
Yeah, that's what I hear in my head when this stuff happens. But being a GM comes with responsibilities. It's an inherent part of running a campaign. You are responsible for the entertainment of the people who make up your table. It's the barest essential that you need. Now, let's talk about excusing dice, right? Some GMs are very, very by the book. And that's fine. That is your GMing style, that is the way you play, and that is perfectly fine. But if you roll poorly, or if you roll well, it is not the fault of the dice when you take the GM seat. Regardless of what system or what role-playing game you play, behind the GM screen is a world where the GM has control over the world around them. In many games, at least. There are some that don't do that, but, we won't talk about them. We're talking about dice rolling games. In those instances, the GM screen is there for you to be able to control and maintain the integrity of your game. If that means that you roll to make sure that somebody doesn't instantly get killed by some very, very good rolls versus some very bad rolls, if it means that when you roll behind the dice, roll behind the tray, you are simply giving the players an impression of a perceived risk, this is the illusion you're trying to create. What you shouldn't be doing is you shouldn't be doing stuff like rolling a dice to a natural 20, even if you roll it genuinely. Now, I won't even talk about if you cheat and sort of move it to a natural 20 behind the screen and then go, oh, look, guys, look, I rolled a natural 20, lifting up the GM screen. Everyone have a look. See that? That's my I'm sorry, the dice rolled where they rolled. This, for me, is like the worst kind of thing you could do as a GM. Never reveal your natural 20s. If your players ask you to roll something in front of them, indulge them. Sure, why not? Roll it in front of them. That way, again, there's no reason to make an excuse. And if you roll a natural 20, it's in front of them. They can see it. But for the most part, the screen is there for you to manipulate, to subterfuge your game. Now, the second type is when you excuse I suppose mentality. The mentality of your monsters and encounters. Well, I'm sorry, but this is just the tactics that my soldiers would use. They would know to go for the mage or the wizard because they're the wizard. Or they would know to go for the cleric because that person's healing. Coming up with these as reasons to why you have absolutely slaughtered your players, it's an excuse. You need to accept responsibility. If stuff happens in your game and your players aren't having fun, aren't engaging, or aren't entertained, then something's gone awry. Somewhere along the line, something has been lost in translation and it's, well, your fault. But just because it's your fault does not mean that there is nothing you can do. So, with this in mind, let's talk about how we can deal with it. How can we fix this? The first thing I need to tell every GM who is watching this video, and I hope that you pass it on to other GMs as well, is that a GM can absolutely 100% be wrong. They're allowed to be wrong. They're allowed to make mistakes. Things are allowed to get out of control, and the GM is allowed to have no idea how to fix it. That's fine. It's just part of learning as a GM, because it's an ongoing thing. You never perfect game mastering. You never perfect the art of running a role-playing game. What you can do is you can learn from every single instance, but it starts by accepting what has happened, and you never accept what happens if you keep making excuses. If you say, no, it's not my fault, the dice did it, then you never learn that the reason why the dice did it was because you'd pitched the encounter level too hard. If you never accept the fact that the mentality of these soldiers gung-hoing it for the spellcasters, who are the weakest members of the group, lead to them not having fun because they're getting killed in the first round, means that you as a GM never learn how to pace your battles so that everyone gets a fair chance to enjoy the game, rather than say, well, we're never playing spellcasters in your game because you target them and kill them without us being able to do anything. Acceptance is the first key thing. Accept that you're willing to make mistakes. Accept that those mistakes will inevitably make you a stronger GM. And that will lead to tons of success. I can't even begin to express how much that piece of advice has helped me. I play upwards of 700 games per year. That's a ton of games. That's actually more games in the last 5 years than many people will play in their entire lives. And I will tell you one thing. There has been no greater lesson than the ones I have learnt from making mistakes. I've had people leave my tables. I've had people get up and rage quit. I've had people complain about me behind my back and to my face. And every single one of those instances I've taken as, what have I done? What can I do differently? And it's helped. It's made me a better GM, it's made me a better person, and it meant that rather than coming up with ideas for what my excuse should be and why I should say that it wasn't really my fault, turning it around and saying, well, it was my fault, what can I do to make it better? Now, sometimes you can be in a different situation where you are losing control because your players have done something. And we can sometimes throw excuses towards our player, and the blame goes that way.
It's not my fault, my lord. My players are all murder hobos. I can't get through the story or adventure. What can I do now?
Well, the one thing you can do is understand the players that you're playing with. Are you playing with a group of murder hobos? Then accept. Don't come up with excuses as to why they're not enjoying it because they're not the type of players that you need for your game. Turn it around. What type of game do you need to play or do you need to run for these players to enjoy themselves? Perspective is such an important aspect to GMing, not just as a skill or statistic to be able to notice traps and ambushes, but also to be able to give us insight into what we need to be able to do and what we need to be able to be the best GM we can. Alright guys, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit that like button, please hit that subscribe button, share the video around, and of course go and visit us in all of our other little stuff here. We've got our Discord channel where you can come and chat with me and a wide community of very cool, very awesome role players who love to discuss topics such as this. You can come and see me on Twitch as I run my various games live, and of course come and help us out by supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/DeadAussieGamer, and for as little as $2 a month, you can help us keep the lights on. And of course, till next time, guys, as always, game hard or die trying. See yas!